couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wanted.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster the breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. My name is Lena Nazari, and you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and we have a Discord. Look for the Beautiful Dead podcast. If you'd like to join our Discord, just let me know. I'll make sure you get an invite. We are just going to keep going because it is February and we had so much fun last week, and I want to keep this party going. We're talking all about love, vampire love specifically in February. And this week we are talking about Only Lovers Left Alive. Which is one of those movies that I think any self-respecting vampire fan will tell you is a must watch. It is one of those ones that we always talk about, we always mention. It's on all of the must-watch lists. It is one of those movies that if you know it, you know it. The second you mention it, everybody who has ever seen it, it will come back to you. It makes quite the impact. So yes, I did this before when the podcast was audio only back years ago, but it was time to bring it back. I'm hoping I can share some clips of the movie on YouTube. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. This one I feel like might be a little more protected than others, but I guess we'll find out. Spoiler alert, if you've never watched this channel or listened to this podcast, I talk about everything from beginning to end. We like to break down the vampire universe, and that means we have to talk about things like sex and death. So you're not going to have any surprises by the end of this. And let's go ahead and talk about it. There is a vampire crossover, by the way. In this movie, you'll see Anton Yelchin, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but he is in this movie, and then he was also in the Fright Night remake. He played Charlie in the remake, which one day I will bring to this podcast. But for now, we're just going to say, Anton, what a loss, what a loss. He was so young too, it's so sad. But when he popped up in this, I was like, oh, I forgot he was in this. And then Tilda Swinton, not only is she in another vampire piece of media, but she actually brings this character, Eve, into the What We Do in the Shadows universe. So for those of you who have seen the episode where they go and meet the vampire council, there are these famous vampires all around, like Blade is there and Eve is there, and it just so many good vampire references in What We Do in the Shadows, but she is one of them. So if you ever saw that episode and you're like, who is this blonde character? It is Eve from this movie. So let's talk about it. All right, we open on our vampires, Adam and Eve, and they are in two separate locations. By the way, I read that when this was written, they didn't put the whole Adam and Eve thing together with the Bible characters. It was not intentional, but I think it works very well. So, all right, they are both lying out, and they're in two separate locations. And we see Eve go out for the night, and she is in, oh, now I'm going to blank on where she was. Not the Maldives. Did I write it down? Tangier. She's in Tangier. And Adam is in Detroit. And Adam is with a man named Ian, which is Anton's character. Ian tracks down rare things for Adam. And in this case, he has tracked down a very rare guitar. And Adam is checking out each guitar. And he slips up and he talks about seeing Eddie Cochran play. And Ian is like, Eddie Cochran? And he's like, oh yeah, I saw him on YouTube. So that's our first hint to the fact that these are our vampires. Back with Eve, she's walking down the streets with the scarf covering. You can only see her eyes. Adam is explaining to Ian that he records his music, but he has no interest in playing live. Then he asks Ian for a special bullet. He wants a .38 caliber bullet that is made of the strongest wood that he can have it made with. And then Adam says it's a special art project. The casing should be brass, but the inside should be wood, and he only needs one. And then Ian's like, hey man, can I use your bathroom? And Adam's like, I'm sorry, it's still out of order. So the implication is that the vampires do not defecate or urinate, which we see that in most vampire stuff.
Can I use your bathroom before I head out? I'm afraid it's still out of order.
Eve is now in a cafe. She meets up with the man who owns the cafe, and they're asking about someone that they both know. We don't know who is yet, but the man says his secret is safe with me and so is yours. Adam leaves his home dressed as a doctor with a leather doctor bag. We see that he lives in a very run-down home. There's overgrowth all around. He's in a very, very bad area. He drives to the hospital. Back in the cafe, Eve is meets up with an older man, and he brings her a bag of something from a pharmacy, and she calls him Christopher Marlowe. So for those of you who don't know, that is a historical reference. He's upset that she uses his real name, so we know that he's at least 400 years old. She attempts again to get him to tell her the truth about Shakespeare, and he won't. She mentions it's only an hour until sunrise, so she needs to get back. So now we know that the vampires are nocturnal. She kisses his cheek and leaves. Adam meets up with a man in the lab in the hospital, and his name is Watson. Apparently they have a deal because Adam gives him a ton of money and gets blood bags. And Watson's like, I wish that you would meet me outside the hospital. I wish we could make a plan that you wouldn't just show up without notice at my place of work. But Adam is like, no, this is the way we're going to do it. This is the way I want it. And then we find out he's getting O negative. I don't know if that's the type that he wants or needs, but we just know that it's O negative. And then Watson's like, by the way, that stethoscope you're wearing around your neck is from like the 60s or 70s. So that's another hint to the fact that Adam is old. Eve takes her pharmacy bag home. Inside it is blood, and we get to see Marlowe, Adam, and Eve each drink blood out of these little aperitif glasses, and we see that it hits them almost like drugs, like a good drug, because they look sort of euphoric after drinking it. That also tells us that the vampires don't need much blood whenever they feed. We also see that Adam is wearing a stone on a necklace and that Eve has a matching stone on a bracelet. All the vampires have their drinks, they lie back, they seem very happy, and we get to see those two sharp canines that are clearly retractable, just the way I like it to be. Eve picks up the phone and she calls Adam. And they turn it into a video call so they could see each other. And she's like, why do you look tired? And he's clearly very depressed, and she can tell, and we find out they are husband and wife. And he explains that he's losing hope, and she says, oh, but you've been through this before. She asks him about his music, and he says, I've really just been writing funeral music. So we know that mentally he is not doing well. She says, come to me. He says he won't. She's like, fine, then I will come to you, even though traveling is very hard on vampires. And he says, I love you so much. Later, we see Adam is composing and recording, and Eve is kind of like rolling around on the floor. It's very artistic. Someone rings Adam's doorbell, and he looks out the window and sees like it's a bunch of young people. He doesn't answer, and finally they go away. Then he plays the violin. And so we know that he is clearly very talented when it comes to music. And we see that Eve can speed read. Eve books a night flight from Tangiers to Paris. And then the following night, she will do Paris to Detroit. So that's how she's going to have to travel, because she has to leave at night and land at night. So it has to be very strategic. Again, someone rings Adam's doorbell, but this time he lets him in because it's Ian. Ian has the bullet for him. Adam says some rock fans were knocking on his door the night before, and he's like, how do they know where I live? And Ian's like, I don't know. I promise I haven't said anything, but what I'll start doing is I'll start spreading rumors that you live somewhere else and try and draw them somewhere else. Eve is talking to Marlo, who had a dream about Eve's little sister, Ava. He tells her, please be careful, and he wonders out loud, why don't you live together if you and Adam can't live without each other? So I thought that was interesting. She mentions that Adam has been morose because he used to hang out with Shelley and Byron. So already we're getting so many great historical references, and I love when they do that. Adam has the wooden bullet, and he takes it and he puts it into a revolver, and then he puts the revolver to his chest. Eve is on the plane reading, and we get one of my favorite tropes, which is when the human cuts their finger and the vampire sees it and like reacts to it. I love that trope. It's used so often, but I just love it whenever I see it. Eve lands in Detroit. She gets a car to Adam's house, and outside she's delighted to see a skunk. Adam opens the door. They're reunited. The kiss is so good. It's such a good moment. We hear their heartbeats. So it tells us that they do have beating hearts. And then they do this like little bowing ritual.
My lady.
And it looks almost like he is giving her a formal invitation, and that will come up later, but you'll see why later. We see them together on the couch, and this is the famous shot that's used on all the posters. It's the one I have. I don't know if you can see it on the vampire wall. It's used on the cover here. You can see it is the famous shot of them on the couch, and it is a beautiful shot. They're talking, they're reminiscing. She mentions that he gave one of his songs to Schubert. He's very forlorn, he's very hopeless. And she tells him he always blames the zombies for his depressive episodes. And zombies is what they call humans. They call them the zombies. And he has just lost all zeal for life. He feels like the zombies are ruining everything and they're awful, and he just doesn't understand the point of living anymore. Then there's this, then we see that she has some kind of power where she can touch an item and tell him how old it is.
A Gibson. 1905.
So she touches the guitar and says 1905. She also touches his stethoscope at some point and dates that as well. So it's an interesting power that she has. Then there is this beautiful shot of the two of them sleeping naked on bed, and it's like pulled from above. It's a beautiful shot. So we know that they can sleep in beds, they don't have to be in coffins, they just can't be in the sun. The next night they go out to see the city. They see an old theater, and then they go back to his house and play chess. And she has made him a surprise, which is blood popsicles. When she first walks to the fridge, he's like, that doesn't work. And she's like, it does now because I plugged it in. And we see that he like keeps books in his fridge. He uses it as like book storage. They lose power, so Adam leads her to the backyard and he like tinkers with the power supply. And I guess he's very good with wiring and electronics and things like that. And she notices that there's the mushrooms there that are out of season, so they kind of muse about life and plant life in general and things being where they don't belong. Later, Adam listens to her heart with the stethoscope, and he tells her he has to go out. But he also mentions that he had a dream about Eve's sister. So we know that the vampires dream, which is something that's rare. We don't often see that in vampire stuff. But also now 2 of the vampires in her periphery have dreamt about this same person. So Adam goes out, and Eve starts looking at their wedding picture, which is from 1868. And she's like, our 3rd wedding. We see that he has framed pictures of famous people all over his walls, including Marlo. And then she finds the gun with the 1 wooden bullet. Adam's at the hospital getting more blood, and when he returns, she confronts him about the gun.
Just tell me that you're having trouble with one of the others. Please tell me that.
And says, tell me this is because you're having trouble with one of the others. So we know there are others out there. And she's like, please tell me that you have this to defend yourself, not hurt yourself. And he says, I don't see any others ever. So that tells us that their numbers are very few. She puts the barrel to her chest and he rips it out of her hands, and we see that they are very, very fast. She tells him that he is wasting his life instead of just appreciating nature and kindness and friendship and all the things that are out there to love, that he's just focusing on all the awful stuff instead of paying attention to the good things around him. She plays a record and they dance, and then they go for a drive, and she tells him all about a special star, and then she admits that she too had a dream about Ava. So she says, I suspect that she is looking for us. He says, shouldn't she be in some coffin somewhere with a wooden stake shoved in her chest? So he does not like Ava. And she goes, she's my sister, we're related by blood. Because she's like, she says, she's my sister. And he goes, is she? And she goes, well, we're related by blood. So that tells me they have the same sire. So they return home and someone is there listening to music. So Adam grabs a wooden stake, but it is Ava, Eve's sister. She has found them. Eve tells Ava, I had a dream about you. And she goes, oh, good, it worked. So that tells us that Eve has an ability to sort of like reach out for other vampires, and that's why they're having these dreams of her. Eve says it's bad luck to cross a threshold without invitation. And Ava's like, oh, and are you still afraid of garlic? And Eve says, I'm not talking about myth. So that tells us that the garlic is not real in this universe, but that the older vampires give each other formal invitation into their homes because they believe it to be bad luck if they do not. That's why we saw that little bit between Adam and Eve. But obviously Ava is a younger vampire, so she does not do all that. Adam does not want her to stay there, and he says, because of last time. And Eve says, well, that was 87 years ago. Are you still upset about the Paris thing? Then Ava says, I'm hungry. He looks annoyed, but he goes to get her some blood, but he will not tell her where it is kept. Later, Adam and Eve are alone, and Adam says she drank a lot of our O negative. And Eve says, yes, but she's been traveling, and you know that fries you. So clearly traveling is really hard on vampires. Eve put Ava in the little bedroom on the first floor. He says, I'm going to need to put all my music in a safe. And Eve says, rest. The sun is coming. She's not going to get up. She's not going to bother with your music. You can do it the next night. The next night, they wake up to a knock on their bedroom door, and Ava comes in, and she tells them, get up, because she's starving. And they're having a really hard time waking up. So I think maybe the older you are, the more you need, more sleep you need, or maybe Ava just is more energetic. Eve says, go get dressed and I'll bring you some blood. They try to get more sleep, but she starts blasting the TV, so now they're up. Ava says she doesn't feel well, and Eve explains there's contamination all over. She has to be careful where she feeds, so we know that the health of the blood affects the vampires. And the reason that they were reacting to the earlier blood like it's a drug is because that blood is clean and it's very good. But if you get bad blood, it can affect you as a vampire. Ava says she wants to hear Adam's music, and he says no. And she goes, but I heard your music at an underground club in LA. So we know his music is out there. It has gotten out there somehow. She begs them to go out for the night so they can hear music. Adam says, I'm not going out, but of course the girls win. So they go out. So at the club, it is the three vampires and Ian. And this is another very famous shot, them at the club. They're all wearing gloves and sunglasses because they are, I think, one, covering their eyes, but also because they're sensitive to light. And we know that the gloves are because these vampires have almost like psychic abilities with their touch. I don't think they all have the same abilities, or else Adam would be able to date his own guitars. But clearly each of them have their own sort of psychic ability, and it comes from the hands, which is why they're protecting their hands. Ian offers to buy Ava a drink. She pulls out a flask, explaining that she filled it before they left. So clearly she figured out where Adam keeps his blood and puts them in a flask. Ian asks for a drink from the flask, and Ava's like, sure, but Adam snatches it out of her hand. We learn that Ian had to sign an NDA to work with Adam. And then Adam's music gets played at the club. So somehow people have gotten a hold of this music. It's out there. That's why all these rock fans are trying to find him, because he's elusive and mysterious and they want to know. Ian and Ava go out on the floor to dance. Adam is very unhappy. So he's finally had enough. He says, I want to go. So they leave. At the house, Ava is playing the drums, much to the annoyance of Adam, who's packing up all his music because he knows somehow it is getting out there and it's really pissing him off. Adam tells Ian, you really need to leave. And then Adam and Eve go to bed, and they're trusting that Ian is going to leave when he's done with his beer, but we see Ava is trying to get him to stay. The next night, Eve wakes up Adam and tells him that she filled a flask for Ava and is going to send her on her way, and Adam is happy. Eve is like, I just want it to be you and me. You're right. She should not be here. So I'm going to fill this I filled the flask. We're going to send her packing. And Adam is like, let's go. So they descend the stairs and they find Ava's room empty. And then they find Ava on the couch sleeping, and Ian is very dead. Very dead. Empty. She wakes Ava, she chastises her. Apparently this has happened before. They throw her out onto the street with her stuff. They tell her, go back to LA. I don't care what you do, but get the fuck out of here. Adam is extremely upset. And he says, why couldn't she just have turned him? So we know that you're able to make new vampires in this world. Obviously, they can be very easily linked to Ian because they were all seen in the club the night before, all out together. And to add insult to injury, Ava also destroyed his 1905 Gibson guitar. So she sucks. They get to work getting rid of the body, which I feel like should be easier in Detroit than maybe some other cities, but it's still getting rid of a body. So they end up in this empty, abandoned warehouse or a factory or something. There's like coyotes running around. And he did mention earlier about this shut down place where they used to make cars. So I'm assuming it's one of those. And they like throw it into this acid pool that turns him to bones very quickly. So whatever they were making there, there's an acid pool left behind. Back at the house, they know they have to run. So they book flights to Tangiers, and some rock fans are ringing his doorbell, and he's extremely overwhelmed. And she's trying to find a connecting flight, and she says London, and he's like, like very strongly opposed to London. I don't know what London did to him, but he does not want to go there. So she lands on Madrid. He's like, what about all my instruments? And she's like, darling, I will get you a beautiful instrument when we get to Tangiers. We just have to go. We have to go. They have fake passports, and her name, by the way, in the passport is Daisy Buchanan. For those who are Great Gatsby fans, I clocked that one. Back in Tangier, you can see that they are very, very, very fatigued from this flight. They do not look good. As they're walking to her place, you can see how fatigued they are, and now their eyes look very different. They're like brighter, they're much more inhuman, and they make it back, they lay down to sleep, and when they wake up, they are extremely fatigued. And she's like, we have to get up, we have to find food. She calls Marlowe, but he doesn't answer. Adam is really, really hard to wake up, and then when he's walking, he's really having trouble walking, so he is not doing well. They head out, they try to find Marlowe, and a bunch of people are trying to sell them drugs, probably because they look like frickin' junkies, which I think, if I remember correctly, the wigs are like partly yak hair or something to make them look wild, and it's such a good good way to make them look different than, I mean, they look different than human, but just so subtly. So people are trying to sell them drugs, and one of them's like, I have what you need, and Adam leans in and he like pulls his glasses down and you can see his eyes are different, and he goes, not what I need.
I have what you need. Not what I need.
It's so good. They pound on the door of the cafe and the owner opens it. And he explains that Marlowe is not well, and he leads them into this back room. And this is like Marlowe's apartment in the back of this cafe. And he's in bed, and he gives her the last bit of good blood that he has, and it's not much. And he explains that he got contaminated blood, and he's very sick, and he's not going to be able to get over this. He explains that, so this is his deathbed confession. And he finally explains that he wrote all of Shakespeare's works. He allowed them to have credit in order to get his work out there. And he calls Shakespeare illiterate, and then he passes away. So as they grieve, Adam and Eve need to find good blood because they are not going to make it much longer. They're struggling. Adam finds the energy to comment on the shitty wiring in the city, I guess, because he's like an electricity nerd of some sort. And then they ask out loud, like, what are we gonna do? And Eve's like, I am gonna get you that present. So they kiss, they head into a more populated part of the city, and she says, you stay here, don't go anywhere, I will be back. And she goes around the corner and she's like, stay out of trouble. So while she's away, music starts playing in a club, and Adam is drawn out and he's just enjoying the music. Eve returns. She takes the time to also watch the band. And when the song is over, she hands him this beautiful instrument. They go to a secluded area, they talk, they play the guitar. Dawn is approaching, and they muse about how doomed they are, and we hear the rooster crow, so we know the sun is coming when a human couple comes into frame and they're making out. The vampires watch, and they're trying to decide, do they really want to drink from these humans? She's like, are we really going to do this? But they really don't have another choice. And then Eve asks Adam to explain the theory of entanglement again, and he does. And essentially it states that sometimes two particles will become so fundamentally linked that if you change one, you change the other. And then they say, you know, we will turn them, we won't kill them. And then they approach the lovers.
Excusez-moi.
Credits. Oh, so this is a long one. This is a little over 2 hours, but it did not feel like it. That being said, if it's the first time you ever watch it, you might notice the length, but we're going to talk about it in a minute. So let's talk about tropes I love and tropes I hate. I really hope I was able to share some scenes with you guys. If not, then maybe I could do some stills. I guess we'll find out, but I don't know how to describe how beautiful this movie is without sharing scenes with you. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. I love historical references in vampire media, and we get some really fun ones in this one. We get music, we get literary references. It's so fun, and I loved catching it. And I love the idea of vampires mating for eternity. Now, I don't think it's all of the vampires in this world. I think it's specifically Adam and Eve. Like, they are truly in love. Thank you, Juliet. They're soulmates, you know, which I love that idea. I love the idea of soulmates. I also love the idea of blood being tainted by poor health or pollutants. We talked about this last week with Love at First Bite, where he drinks from the drunk person and now he's drunk, and he talks about how gross the blood was. So we've talked about this, and I love the idea of like tainted blood now makes the vampire sick. It adds like a whole layer of problems to the vampire universe. I cannot think of anything in this movie that I hated. I think it's been 2 weeks in a row now where I'm like, there's nothing I didn't like. I think 3 weeks, because I think I said the same thing about Blood Ties, didn't I? So I don't know, maybe I'm becoming less picky. But I didn't see anything in this that I was like, ugh, I hate that. So let's do the ratings. You know, I'm always a little nervous to do ratings when it's a movie that is so well loved, but let's talk about it. How scary or evil are the vampires of Only Lovers Left Alive? They do kill. We see that with Ava, right? But covering up a kill is just as hard for vampires in this world as it is for us, okay? There's no cleaning crew. There's no way to like make this go away. So hiding a body is not easy. So that does kind of limit how much murdering these vampires can do. Also, it doesn't appear that they need much blood, but they do need very specific blood. They can't just go out and drink from anybody. They can't just walk into an alleyway and kill you. They need clean blood. So that's why they go to places like blood banks. So it's not like anybody who comes across their path is gonna be in trouble. It doesn't seem like there's very many of them. He even mentions, she's like, tell me this is for one of the others. And he goes, I don't see the others ever. So I think they are a dying breed. Most of them appear to have good morals. Ava seems to be sort of the outlier, but we see Marlo, Adam, and Eve all have very good morals. We do see, obviously, some are very willing to kill, and they are very hard to kill themselves. He had to have this specific bullet made. It had to be this like specifically strong wood in order to kill him. So I am going to give them, because they are tough to kill and they do need to drink blood, and if they are backed into a corner, they will do it. I'm going to give them 4 out of 10 stakes to the heart for scariness and evil, but they aren't in there like, they're not mesmerizing people. They're not slaughtering people every night. As a matter of fact, they were living off of shot glasses full of blood each night. They don't even need that much blood. And honestly, they're making blood popsicles. I mean, how scary is that? It's not. How sexy or alluring are these vampires? We know they have sex, but we don't see humans being like inexplicably drawn to them. Even, I almost said Anton, but that's the actor's name. Ian even was like, he like thinks Ava's cute, but he also is like she's a little bit weird, and she's trying to like cling on to him, and he's like, ugh. So obviously. Also, they have to wear gloves to protect themselves from being overwhelmed by touch. So I imagine it would be very hard for them to be skin to skin with a human. When Ava is left alone with a man, she kills him. There's no implication they had sex at all. She killed him, she drank his blood, she went to sleep. They don't feel particularly sexy to me. I'm gonna give them their honorary point, and 1 for having sex and 1 for staying young forever. But that's it. So 3 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure, and that's only 1 lower than their scariness score. So they're like really not very scary or sexy. They just sort of are. They just are. They just sort of exist amongst us, but they're not necessarily terrifying or very sexy. Ooh, I keep knocking into this microphone. Gosh darn it. My thoughts. This is one of those movies that every time I watch it, I love it more. The first time I saw it, I just thought it was so slow. I thought the pacing was so slow. But now I go back and I appreciate the pacing. The point of that pacing is because if time is not something you care about, then of course you're gonna take an hour to look at a star. You're gonna be delighted by a skunk because you have no worry. You don't worry about money, you don't worry about aging, you don't worry about running out of time, so you get to enjoy these little things. That being said, it can also lead to a life full of despair and a lack of hope because there is no end in sight anymore. So I loved the idea of both of those. And I think this is one of those movies that you just have to settle in and you just have to allow it to happen to you. You just have to just go for that ride. We've talked about before on this podcast the idea of the vampires struggling without a food supply. We've seen it in like Daybreakers. That's because they made so many vampires that humans are now running out. In this, it's the idea that you need clean fresh, unpolluted blood, which is very hard in this day and age. So anytime you limit the vampire's food supply and you back them up against that wall, it's always an interesting idea of how are they going to handle that? Are they just going to die out, or are they going to figure out another way? I love the relationship between Adam and Eve. I love what they have set up for themselves over the years. It's funny because Marlowe's like, you can't live without each other, but you don't live with each other. And I get that. Sometimes you do need to go off and do your own thing, but it doesn't mean you don't love each other. You don't have to be together every minute, right? So they've built this thing for themselves over the years that works for them. And in this movie, I love that there's so many little things that you might not catch every time. And so as you watch it, you catch more tiny little things, like the fact that they've had at least 3 weddings because they've been together for so long. It's one of those movies I think that everybody should watch. There is nothing out there that is similar. It's so different. I would love to know if you guys agree with me. I looked it up and it says, according to the script, Adam was, I think, 500 or 600 years old, and Eve is supposed to be 2,000 years old. She was originally a Celtic druid. So that in and of itself is really something to take into consideration, that she has been around 2,000 years and she's still finding joy in flowers and mushrooms and skunks and stars. And he's only 500 or 600 and he's having trouble finding joy in anything. So it's an interesting thing to sit back and think about all of that. And I loved the ending on the theory of entanglement, and obviously it is them. It is these 2 particles that by hurting one you hurt the other, and that when one finds just the whole idea of it. I just absolutely love this movie. One of these days I hope to meet people who were involved in the movie. So if you've never seen it, please go watch it. If you have seen it, please tell me what your thoughts are. I can't wait to see the comments about this one. It's such a powerful movie. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. I have seen movies like The Addiction that people swear is one of the greatest vampire movies of all time, and I didn't like it. You know, so hey, maybe this is one of those movies that people swear is one of the greats, and you're like, I don't get it, I hate this movie. Let me know. That's what this channel's all about. And come into our Discord where we talk about this stuff all day long, every day. So you'll love it in there with the Fang Gang. We're nothing but vampire nerds all the time. So next week is going to be a little bit different. Instead of our usual Sunday night premiere, we are going to do a Saturday night premiere. It is going to be the night of Valentine's Day. So if you're with your Valentine doing love stuff, then it's fine. I get it. You can't be with us. But if you want to come join us, we're going to do the premiere on Valentine's Day. We'll be talking about Dracula, A Love Tale, which is now officially out in the United States. Please go watch it and then come. It's going to be myself, Tony from Hack the Movies, talking about Dracula, A Love Tale on Valentine's night all together. I'm so excited. I'll be wearing my nicest dress. I'll have a glass of champagne or red wine or blood or whatever, and I will be so ready to have Valentine's Day with all of you. I hope you will join us. In the meantime, I hope you're well. I love you all, and I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.
And big finish. Thank you.